one's for a meeting. That's like for. We have stuff like that.
Good evening. Welcome to the November 21st Plan and Zoning Commission meeting. I will go over the rules and procedures before we get started tonight. The Plan and Zoning Commission is generally an advisory body to the City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make the final decision on all matters before the Commission other than site plans and subdivision plats, unless denials or conditional approvals are appealed. Please contact the City Clerk or Development Services Department staff for details on council hearings. Applicants will be given 10 minutes to present the request. Proponents and then opponents from the public are allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Applicants are then allowed a 5-minute rebuttal if necessary. The hearing will then be closed and the Commission will discuss and vote on the issue. All comments are to be germane to the item under consideration and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed, and those will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless an individual present or a member of the Commission requests that the item be removed from the consent and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. We can get started with approval of the meeting minutes.
So moved.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Any abstentions, same sign. Motion passes. We have one item on the consent agenda tonight. Item number 1 is a request from Capital Foods for review and approval of a public hearing site plan, Crossroads Fireworks, for property located at 5030 East 14th Street, and for the following Type 2 design alternatives in accordance with City Code. A, to allow a primary frontage build-to zone of 36.33 feet when 0 to 5 feet is required per City Code. And B, to waive the requirement to have an entrance on a primary frontage facade per City Code. Is there anyone on the audience who would like to move this item to be heard in public hearing tonight? Anyone in the Commission? Seeing none, the item will remain on consent. There's also a request to move item number 2 to the consent agenda. Item number 2 is a request from 414 61st Street for LLC for the following regarding property located in the vicinity of 414 61st Street. A, determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with the Plan DSM. B, amend the Plan DSM to revise the future land use classification of the property from parks and open space and development control to community mixed use. And C, to rezone the property from F flood district to RX1 mixed use district to allow reuse of an existing building as an office. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to keep this item on the public hearing agenda? Seeing none, Is there anyone on the commission who would like to keep this item? Seeing none, if there is a motion, we can move this item to consent.
I'll move it to consent.
Thank you. That, I need a vote for the motion?
No, I think you just, if you want to go ahead and just move the consent agenda. That's okay.
That was my fault.
No, that's okay.
I'd like to move the consent agenda.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Oh, any opposed? Any abstentions? Same sign. Motion passes. We do have a request for item number 4 to be continued to the December 19th meeting. Item number 4 was already continued from the November 7th meeting. And item number 4, there's a request from Faithful Moments LLC for property located at 5702 Grand Avenue. The property was formerly owned by Stephen Johnson. A, determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with the Plan DSM. B, amend the Plan DSM to revise the future land use classification of the property from low-density residential to medium-density residential. And C, to rezone property from N3C Neighborhood District to NX2 Neighborhood Mixed District to allow the redevelopment of the property for row home buildings. Is there a motion to public first?
Yeah, I just want to maybe take a second to clarify and just see if there was anybody in the audience, if you're okay with that, Chair.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Is there anybody in the audience here tonight that's here for this item? Show of hands. So the applicants requested it be continued. We're supporting that as staff to the December 19th meeting. They're looking at their proposal that the concept, depending on how it changed, might change the zoning that they would need to request or the land use plan amendment. So we think it's a good idea to continue this, see what they come up with. But it would be continued to the December 19th meeting. And we'd invite all of you to return then.
Thank you, Jason. Can I get a motion to continue item number 4?
I'll move. Yep.
Thank you, Chris. All those in favor of the continuance, please raise your right hand. Motion passes. That brings us to item number 3, which is a request from Michael Renovations for the following regarding property located in the vicinity of 629 49th Street. A, determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with the Plan DSM. B, to amend the Plan DSM to revise the future land use classification of the property from low-density residential to high-density residential. And C, to rezone from N54 Neighborhood District to NX2 Neighborhood Mixed District to allow the reconstruction of an existing covered parking structure and retaining wall. Bert will be presenting for staff.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, Bert Drost, planning staff for the City of Des Moines. Item number 3 is, like the Chair just said, is a request to rezone the property from the N5-4 classification to an NX2 Neighborhood Mixed District, which is really a multi-household district. The subject property is located in the Waterbury neighborhood on the east side of 49th Street at the intersection with Woodland Avenue. The subject property currently contains 5 multi-household buildings that each contain 4 dwelling units, plus a carport structure at the back that includes a kind of like a carriage house type unit at the north end. So the property right now is zoned N5-4, which really only allows for up to 4 dwelling units. They're needing to rebuild that carport structure that's on the back part of the property. As I'll show you soon in the photos, the structure is failing. And then in order to demolish that structure and then rebuild it, is considered to be an expansion of the use, so it needs to seek a rezoning to allow that expansion. I would also mention that the zoning code doesn't, or design code doesn't allow for carports, so they will be looking at returning to the commission in the future to get a design alternative that would allow the reconstruction of a carport. Here are some photos. These are the 2.5-story Tudor apartment buildings that are there now. That would not change. The proposal by the applicant is not to increase the number of units. And then these are 2 photos of that carport structure that's on the rear of the property that is failing, that they need this rezoning in order to rebuild. And then at the north end of the carport, there's this carriage house structure as well. I'll let the applicant clarify if that's a dwelling unit or an office. Our staff recommendation is for approval. Like I said, they're not proposing to make any changes to the density. They're just needing this zoning so they can rebuild what's already there. Staff has recommended one zoning condition, that the site be limited to a maximum of 21 units. As you'll see in the comment cards, there are some concerns about this rezoning would allow, for a new, taller structure to be built there. So the commission could consider additional zoning conditions if you feel it's warranted. But I'll just go through the comment cards now. The neighborhood, this is a summary of the neighborhood outreach that was done. I'll let the applicant expand on that. We have received 10 cards in opposition and 1 card in support. It's over 20% opposition, so it will need a supermajority vote by City Council in order to pass. Here's the comment cards. Like I said, 1 in support, and then there's 10 in opposition. And if you read the comment cards, most of them aren't really concerned about what's already there. They're just concerned about what the rezoning would allow if those existing structures would be removed, and then the site would be cleared for a complete redevelopment. So are there any questions for me while I scroll through these?
Any questions for Bert?
Bert, is it possible for them to rebuild the carport?
They need either the rezoning or
Okay.
they would need a use variance. If
That's what I was
rezoning
gonna say,
would be
can we do
denied,
that?
I mean, staff would prefer if the rezoning is just cleaner
Okay.
because we don't think they would qualify for a use variance since they would have to prove there's no economic use of the property without that use variance.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Would staff be amenable to having the height restriction?
I think so. We wouldn't oppose it. Yeah, I think the Annex 2 district would allow like a 3-story, 3.5-story building. So they, right now there's 2.5-story buildings there. And like, since it allows a 3.5-story by right, staff could administratively grant a type 1 design alternative to go 50% over that, which would be the 5.5-story height measure mentioned in that card. Any other questions?
So Bert, just to clarify, the concern is demoing the site with the existing 21 units and future construction of potentially higher buildings with a type 1 design alternative from staff?
Well, by right, they could do 3.5 stories with an administrative type 1, and I don't know that staffs would grant anything with that anyway, if we would entertain a type 1, but theoretically, staff could grant administratively them the right to go 5.5.
Yeah, we can look into that a little. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the point is that 3.5 stories is what is allowed. There's a mechanism, whether it's administrative or commission approved for a taller building. But
What's the height limit for NC and 3C? the current,
Oh, N5-2. And-
Is that what it
or I'm
currently
sorry,
is?
Right now, it's, the current zoning is N5-4, which N5 is a single household neighborhood district. The -4 just means that they could have up to 4 units in each household.
okay, so nothing about height with that?
Yeah, if you just, it'd be the House D building type, so let me just look really quick.
It's probably 2.5-ish.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. Yeah, 2.5 stories.
Can we change it to N521?
Well, we'd have to continue this a while and add to the code. I think the gist of it here is that I think everybody's comfortable with what's there today. It's a nuance of the zoning code that this is, in this case, yes, it feels like it's hampering us, but the reality is citywide, universally, you want non-conforming uses to go away. So, over time. And so that's why that provision is there that we consider once you demolish or remove something, it's gone from a non-conforming status standpoint. So we have to look at this as a rezoning. We can't just, there's no magic wand to wave here. So I think the condition that staff had and also what you're hearing from the neighbors both speak to what would happen if there's a tornado or there's a fire. So those are things that are worth thinking about. For sure. So height, we've already suggested number of units. I think, like Bert said, height would be another one. But those, think about it and see what you guys come up with.
I'm sorry, I may be confused. So it's only the carport going down, the regular buildings are still there.
Exactly.
So right now,
The accessory structure can be considered an expansion of the legal non-conforming use that is there today. So the multifamily development with 21 units is considered legal non-conforming in the N5-4 district.
okay,
And so by removing the carport and then rebuilding the carport, that's considered an expansion of the residential use, even though it's not increasing the units.
and even though it's just replacing the old one that's there? So it's on the same footprint, it's the exact same thing, or is there something bigger going in there?
I think we think it's the same footprint, but the short answer is yes. The way the code is set up, tearing it down and rebuilding it with the same footprint, it's still an activity. You're eliminating that nonconformity, and then you're building it back up. So it's at that point. You eliminate it, so you're starting fresh. You got what you have at that point, and then to add to it, which is a new carport, is adding. You are tripping zoning at that point.
And the carport's already gone?
No,
No, it's just really dangerous looking.
There's a retaining wall that's part of it that's failing on the backside.
I mean,
yeah,
So I guess, can I ask a question about this in a different way?
sure.
So this is an opportunity to protect high-quality and well-designed multifamily apartments within, or multifamily structures within a neighborhood that benefits from having this type of housing close at hand. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And so this is an opportunity then for us to protect that zoning, right? And recommend, this is, from my perspective, is exactly what we're looking to have in neighborhoods. And I'm surprised no one's saying, yay, here's a dangerous structure that a kid could get stuck in, and yay, we're creating safety in our neighborhood. So maybe we need to work on asking some other questions when we do outreach for efforts like this. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Otherwise, I will invite the applicant to the podium. Please state your name and address.
Sure.
And,
Michael Ronberg with Michael Renovations,
You have up to 10 minutes, and then you can sign in afterwards.
4001 Cottage Grove Avenue. I purchased the place in 2000. It's nice because it was built in 1923, and it fits in well with the neighborhood. I've had a number of people come show their relatives or family members. They said that they didn't even realize that there were apartments in there. Because they got setbacks and they're not in a row, and it's 5 fourplexes in a single-family house. This you can kind of see, but from the down below, the street level goes up like this. so nobody can see the carports whatsoever when you look up there. And then on the backside, it goes into the backside of the neighbors, and there's a couple garages there and some fences, and it's not visible whatsoever there. So I appreciate what everybody's been talking about. I did talk to the neighbors. I had a couple neighbors stop by the neighborhood meeting, which I had it on site. And then a gentleman called me, and I called him back on the phone. And I think what he was talking about is that I don't think people have a problem with the carport per se. I mean, from the neighborhood people, the comments are a little bit different. It was just the rezoning issue. And then, of course, there's this thing at 5702 Grand Avenue. And I didn't see it, but the guy that I worked for said, stop rezoning in our neighborhood. So there's just signs here, and then there was people here to come down to talk about the rezoning in 5702. And I don't know if that got conflated a little bit with what's going on here. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell because you drive around and says, stop rezoning in our neighborhood. And we're down here for rezoning the property. And, yeah, I mean, the input was just like, we're not going to change the footprint of the carport. Just want to put it back as is. I said that I would say a couple things for the neighbors. Maybe one, I don't know. I'm just going to put this out here. I did talk to the lady over here, which was nice. Possible solutions were with the Planning and Zoning Commission, grant a variance for the conditional use on the property for the reconstruction of the carport only just for the carport. And I can't decide that. I'm just going to say that. And I don't know, there's other possible City of Des Moines options without rezoning the place. Height restrictions were good. I don't want to put a financial incentive on this property because I'm not going to be around forever. And I don't want somebody to come in the future to change the neighborhood because they have the ability to go to 21 units. And the height restriction, like I said, would help with that. He talked about a fire. The nice thing about having 6 buildings is it's hard to kind of burn them all down. But we could have a tornado, which I never thought about. So I wouldn't view it like that, but spent a lot of time and effort making sure that everything's been redone there. They all have original windows there. And I just don't want that financial, and the neighbors can tell me, the ability to have somebody else in the future do something different. So I do need the carports done though. I mean, it's just something that needs to be done. And I wish I didn't have to come down here and ask for permission, but you know, that's the way it is. So I think that's my 2 cents. Does anybody have any questions or?
Thank you. Am I hearing you correctly that you wouldn't be opposed to a height restriction as part of the rezoning?
I wouldn't be opposed. No, just as long as things stay the way they are. Unless I'm missing something, I wouldn't be no to a height restriction.
Any other questions for the applicant?
So the carport, your intent would be you just want the same open carport with a roof over the top, or are you looking at building garages, or what is the actual?
Well, I looked at some different options there. I want to use the same floor plan as is. I have another place at 46 and University, and it does have the original carports there. I mean garages. And I think at one point in time they could have had that here. I don't know for sure. But the problem with that is that people back in and back out to the garages, and they get kind of bent up because sometimes the people that live there do that. Sometimes it's somebody just driving around or delivery trucks come in. And so, I mean, I bought the place in '98 and I said, well, let's put some new garages on this thing. And then I put one on another house, 453 Tonawanda, and it's just easy to dent these garages doors. Like, I mean, it's just real easy, and then all of a sudden, it doesn't really look good with garage doors, because they don't look good, sort of dented up. So that's why it's really nice for that area not to have any garage doors there. And, I mean, that's part of it too, because I thought about doing some different things too. But, you know, if I put all new garage doors on there, it's not going to take a week or two where somebody actually runs into it. And then I did have a tenant at 4522 University. And before she left, she ran into the garage door. And then she was really nice about it because she did call and tell me about it, you know. And I knew the garage door wasn't new, so the garage door was over $900. So I just said, well, let's just do $90 because I didn't want to replace the thing.
But to clarify, so
Sure.
you're not wanting garage doors, but so you are still wanting to make sure there is an area that is covered. So if you tore this thing away and there was not a covered parking area again, is that a problem or is that an option?
Well, we're kind of in a higher dollar place down there in Waterbury. And there's people that park in there. And it's hard to attract certain people that don't have covered parking. So, you know, the cheapest thing for me to do is to not put a roof on this place. But then you're not attracting maybe, I don't know if I'd say the same clientele, but you're missing out on people that really have nice cars and really want to protect the place. And by having those carports too, it really takes off any parking out on the street. And I think that's another reason why people don't recognize that it's all, 21 units in there, because there's not a bunch of cars that may be in front of a regular apartment house.
Yeah, so you're just saying you want a covered area, doesn't have to be garages, you want to make sure the wall doesn't fall down. Those are the objectives, those are minimum objectives that we're looking for. Is that right?
I think that's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this project?
Depends on which part.
Any opponents of the project? You can come up to the podium, state your name and address. You have up to 5 minutes, and then you can sign in afterwards.
I'm Rod Cruzzi. I live at 4910 Country Club Boulevard, right across the street from that house. And to defend our group, we're really happy he wants to repair the carports. The only reason we're here is we wanted to protect the future of the neighborhood and the scale. He's a great neighbor. Those apartments are well maintained. Their tenants are good tenants. And the only time they park on the street is when the carport's in disrepair. And then 49th gets crowded. So we're here to support the carports. We're here just to make sure that whatever zoning changes protects the neighborhood down the road. And yes, getting a public hearing through some event sounds improbable, but I've seen enough things happen in this world in the last 10 years that I doubt nothing. So I just don't, my son will probably move into my house when I move away, and I don't want him or our neighbors to face potentially a 5.5-story building. I brought a bunch of images, but I don't think you need them. I took off of Google Earth to see the scale. It's very appropriate for the scale of the neighborhoods. The houses to the east are 1.5-story bungalows. Very, very lovely homes in that neighborhood, but they're not large. I gain a story just with the grade. There's a full story of grade change between 49th Street and there. So if you even just imagine that image up another story, or if, God forbid, somebody could build 5.5 stories, it'd be really, really tall. So I think most of the neighbors, I can't speak for them, but I spoke to a lot of them, had no idea what the zoning concerns might be. I don't think anybody was overly concerned unless someone on the east side of the property about rebuilding the carports. I'm responsible for probably most of those votes by saying we need to make sure that the zoning protects the neighborhood in terms of height. So if you can figure out a way to do that, I think they're fantastic neighbors. The buildings are very well maintained. They're not noisy. I hardly ever hear anyone, maybe someone playing a violin through the window, and that's wonderful. So if there's a way to just sort of protect the neighborhood and protect that character, I know I, for one, would be really happy, and I can't speak for a few of my neighbors that are here, but I'm guessing everybody would be really, really happy. And that's what this process is about. So, Chris?
So are you in favor of the zoning that's there currently? If the zoning could stay there currently, the current zoning is correct?
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I'm not, if it needs to be zoned for higher density because there's the units, I'm not opposed to that as long as with it doesn't come a larger building. If they limit the units and they limit the heights, I don't know all the other zoning aspects, but I'm guessing there's nothing else that would overly frighten me. There's still some clauses that about in the new zoning code about fitting into the neighborhoods. I'm not overly worried about the architecture. So if you leave the zoning, fine. If you change the zoning, if we can put some provisions on it that keep the scale down and keep it more in the neighborhood of this, I think I'd be very, very happy. So.
Thank you. Please sign in on the
Could
white sheet.
May I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Oh, I have a question. What I heard you say was that in terms of if a design for the carport or the garages could be figured out, that's one thing. My question has to do for the wall, the supporting wall. Was there a concern about that?
No, I mean, again, I don't live next to them on the east, but I've seen the drawings. It's done by a qualified, highly qualified engineering firm. And just glancing at the drawings, I believe Michael is approaching the runoff from the neighboring site and from his roof in a way that's better than it's ever been. Because I mean, when I talked to Michael, he just said, I just want to build my carports. You know, that's all he wants to do is maintain his property. I think he's improving the situation because the runoff from the properties that are uphill are probably what deteriorated the retaining wall. So the way that I've seen the engineering, it looks like they're picking up the water where they all intersect and they're dealing with it. I'm not going to own that because I'm not doing it, but it looked like it's being done very responsibly. So I think the carport and the retaining wall are one and the same, at least the way I speak of it. I know there's some neighbors here that live to the east. If they want to speak, they can maybe add some information. But I'd be delighted if he could rebuild his carports, and whatever we do just keeps the scale there and everybody's happy. So I feel bad we had to put him through this, but that's the only way we could make sure we could get those other provisions potentially taken care of.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak in opposition to this project? Please come up to the podium, state your name and address. You have up to 5 minutes, and you can sign in afterwards.
No, it won't be 5 minutes. I'll get you out of here. Gary Calvert, 646 48th Street. If you go back to that previous picture, you can see my house. There, it's yes, right toward the end of the driveway. I actually grew up in one of the apartments, going a couple years back. But anyway, I just want to see carport, parking, whatever you want to call it, redone, allowing him to do it as quickly as he can, so you don't have the cars on the street. Unfortunately, I don't know if it can be done before the snowplows get out there, but I guess the only thing I was concerned about was if somebody could come in later with this rezone and build additional units. Because there is space in front anymore, they build on top of each other. But these are nicely kept, they're set back. He's a good neighbor. So I guess anything we can do to move forward and just get so-called carport redone as quickly as possible without going to some new massive rezoning, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this project? Please come up to the podium, state your name and address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
I'll just be brief. Maria LaFrance, 4924 Country Club Boulevard. Also, I think they're fantastic and would love to see the carports rebuilt. I think it might also offer some nice privacy from the neighbors behind. My main concern is the next owner, and what that zoning change might bring. And also to preserve these buildings are 101 years old, and I think they're beautiful, and so I wouldn't want them replaced with something else. So.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak against this project? Please state your name and address. You have up to 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Steve Balderson. I live at 4915 Country Club Boulevard. I've been in our home, or our family's been in our home for 27 years, and actually, I did not realize that we were moving across the street from apartments. They're so well maintained, they've been great neighbors, and the carport, I looked at it today, I don't know how it could be on a larger footprint than what already exists, so I don't understand the rezoning aspect of it. So I'd like to see everything retained as it is, but with a new carport.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this project? Seeing none, is there anyone neutral? Seeing none, the applicant does have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
I just wanted everybody to be aware that the rezoning kind of is on a fast track. On Monday night, the city council actually set the date of their hearing for December 9. So I just thought the neighbors might be interested to know that. Normally, the council will set hearing after the P&Z's meeting, but in this case, the applicant wants to try to get construction going yet this fall. So they did ask for that expedited time. So the council's hearing has been set for December 9 already.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't ask for anybody to come down there, but I appreciate the neighbors. So I need to say that. I appreciate you guys for coming. I know it takes your time, and you guys could be doing something else. So. But it's nice that you're here. So, thanks.
Thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
Could I offer a couple thoughts before you guys talk?
Yep.
That's right.
I just wanted to remind folks that there is a staff recommendation that caps the maximum number of units at 21 units, which is what's currently there. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, the other things, I just wanted to, obviously, we've heard discussion about height. I wanted to throw, as I was listening, I was thinking a little bit more about it, too. You know, a couple more things. I don't think we need any zoning conditions. You know, something that's nice about this site is the setbacks, too. But the zoning, the building type and the zoning related to it requires averaging. So I think we're okay there. I think because if you know, God forbid these buildings would be replaced someday, a new building would have a setback based off the averaging of the houses around it. The other thing that's, you know, as you listen to people talk about the property and think about, you know, how neat it is, it's also the fact that it's it's multiple buildings divided up by, you know, small clusters. It's not one building with 21 units. It's a handful of buildings, each with, I can't remember what he said, 4 units. So as you deliberate, I think of reading the room, I think the commission, I mean, I'm already expecting your motion to have some height language, but you might also think about maybe there could be a zoning condition that could be, you know, cap. I don't know if you want to say 4 units per building, but you could, you know, cap it at a maximum of 21 units, maybe no more than 6 units per any building or something along, whatever you wanted to come up with. But that was just something else that occurred to me as people talked about character that might be something else to think about.
Thanks, Jason.
Could we make a condition that any future redevelopment has to match the character of this development to the satisfaction of the planning administrator?
Yeah. If the applicant would agree to that, that could be a zoning condition.
Oh,
I'm looking at our legal team.
Do we really want to do that anyway, though? I mean, I guess so we're saying when we say the character, so this tornado goes down, you can only replace it with an English-looking brick building again or something? I mean, that seems challenging, given how society changes. I guess I'm more curious procedurally here. I mean, this was triggered so it's non-conforming. The change here is triggering that we can't just deny and then go and provide an alternative use because why?
they don't meet the variance test, which means, there is an ability to make money off this property without the carports. Variance test is very high. I don't think, the other thing we have to ask ourselves, I don't think anybody's, there's apartments there today, there's 21 units there today, the zoning doesn't match that, but everybody's fine with that, just because of the way it looks. So that tells me that the zoning isn't wrong. In this particular case, in this circumstance, it just needs a few conditions to maintain the character that everybody likes. So there's no real reason to say, well, we can't change the zoning here.
Well, we have to change, so are you recommending that it stays at the current zoning, or that?
No, Chris is asking about the use variance process.
Right.
And I'm saying that I don't think that's a path that's viable here. I don't believe they meet the variance test, and I also secondarily question, I believe the zoning is appropriate. Multifamily is, the project that's there today has shown that it's appropriate, it's just how it's done.
Right.
If, like, for example, let's say the roof on this thing falls down, right? You say, yeah, we aren't going to put back a lean-to again. We're going to just, rebuild the back wall, because they would have to build a retaining wall, right? I mean, would we have to do rezoning to rebuild the retaining wall?
No.
So we have to rebuild the retaining wall, and then we just happen to put up some solar panels that happen to cover some ground and help us from land use.
I guess-
what's the issue with that?
What's the issue of rezoning it and having conditions that limit the numbers, limit the height, possibly limit the number per building? And then it's a legal use. They can have a garage if they want, carport if they want,
I mean, I just lean towards simple. The fewer moving parts, the fewer unintended consequences, the few unexpected outcomes. What does 21 units look like in the future? That's why. I mean, I think this is a very smartly well-designed building. I had no idea that it was this many apartments at all. I've been by this a ton of places. I get you. I'm just trying to figure out if we can do something as simple as possible, as least complex as possible, which seems to be typically the way we want to do things anyway. What's the difference between this thing being rebuilt versus we just have a covered area of an open parking lot?
First, we don't have the zoning enforcement staff here tonight that interpret the zoning code, so you're asking for an interpretation as to whether or not we just put some, would the solar panels, or, like some other, could we get around it with, we're going to call it something else, but it functions as a carport. That's not an interpretation and a decision that anybody here tonight can make. I just think, I think it's shown that apartments, multifamily can work here. I don't see any reason why the zoning can't work here. If we have some conditions, I think having conditions is definitely warranted. Excellent case has been made by the neighbors. We were already thinking along those terms as staff. I think they took it in a good direction.
I guess I don't see why the simplest response isn't to take what's currently there and effective and make it in compliance with the zoning. I'm a little bit concerned about, any place could get hit by a tornado and can be rebuilt in an ugly design. That's another process, right? And so it seems to me that the most straightforward and simple approach is to take this property and change the zoning with some reasonable conditions that make it in compliance with what it actually is.
May I ask a question on a different subject about the carport design and so forth? Is this, whatever happens with the zoning or rezoning, is the carport design going to come under review from P&Z or someone else with the city?
If it is, our code right now doesn't have an allowance for a carport, so it would need to come to the commission because there's no other path for it. If he built it in the manner of a garage, if it's an enclosed garage, that would be an administrative review.
This is not the last time we'll see the NX2.
Can you use your microphone, please? Thank you.
I don't think this is going to be the last time we see an NX2 request within a lower density neighborhood come up. And I think if you drive down Ingersoll and see the multifamily, I don't know if they're condominiums or townhomes, that we approved rezoning a plot of land not too far from this, if you place those buildings on this site, they're extremely tall, that building type. So I get the neighbors' concerns, and we're going to hear another one in a couple weeks. I think those buildings are just too tall. And I think that's, in NX2, I don't know what building type it is, D or whatever, allows for a flat roof, 3.5 stories tall, with the staff ability to take it up to 5.5. And I think that's a concern for me. The buildings we're getting more and more dense on smaller and smaller pieces of land in neighborhoods that are 1.5, 2-story residential neighborhoods. And it just doesn't feel right. I know we're all for density and we want to increase housing, but I think the building types in some of these NX2s are getting a little out of hand. A little too tall, a little too dense, for my taste. So that's just my comment. I would make a motion to amend staff's recommendation with the height limitation of 2.5 stories, using whatever averaging staff uses, because it's really difficult to figure out on this site. And I guess that's a motion.
Just to repeat that, to amend staff's recommendation with a height restriction of 2.5 stories?
Correct.
Thank you.
Todd, what about the amount of units in each building? Do you want to comment on that, maybe to re-amend that, or are you okay with that?
I'm fine with it.
I have a question then to follow up on that. What about the design of the building, whatever is happening with rezoning in terms of the character of the neighborhood? That's a question. And then another question is the same, about building materials. That's to be compatible with the rest of the neighborhood as well.
I mean, that's the crux of the situation we're in. We're NX2 or not. And that's, I don't know you want to put style restrictions on it.
Are you talking about potential reconstruction in the future? Well, that would have to meet our current codes. So it would have to be to scale with the neighborhood character and the form-based code, which these buildings were built way before that was. It would still have to meet a certain quality of building that we're looking for in our neighborhoods.
There's some material standards in our tax abatement requirements. There's been some state changes, of course, that have impacted what we can regulate on materials. But, the thing that's occurred to me, and I don't think the owner wants to, it's like it should be designated a local landmark. That's kind of what people want. You know what I'm saying? Like for that level of design review, but that's not on the table today. But I think with the conditions that Todd's noted in his recommendation, I think we're setting pretty good. So, and I did want to clarify that the flat building type, there's actually, although in general we can waive things administratively up to 50%, that building type actually has specific language that says to go from 3.5 to 5.5, to go over 3.5, that's a public hearing, that's a type 2. So only the commission could approve going above 3.5 anyway, and neighbors would be noticed. But at 2.5 as a zoning condition, it's great.
So right now, we're proposing basically a short NX2, all the rest is the same. So it could be 21 boxy units someday, in theory, as long as they're 2.5 tall. That's what the proposal is.
We have the staff recommendation at capping the maximum of dwelling units at 21, amended to limit any reconstruction to 2.5 stories.
And if we do that, though, I guess the question from earlier was, we don't have carport guidance anyway, so do we have to come back to deal with the carport, or does he get to build his carport?
That would be site plan compliance. So they will have to come back with the site plan, and if it's a carport, it will be in front of us again. or maybe a type 2? Is it a type 2?
Yes, it'll be in front of you, but if he chooses to do an enclosed garage, there is possibility it could be administrative.
But I want to come back to my question, too, about the character of the neighborhood and so forth. And I didn't hear anything in terms of some numbers that would be restricted in terms of what could go on the property, which could possibly be not in the character of the neighborhood. Now, correct me if I'm wrong.
If I could, if I'm reading this right, Annex 2 says that it's intended for a mix of single household houses with appropriately scaled and detailed multiple household building types in the same neighborhood. So doesn't that already bake in a level of character and scale and massing that would lean back more towards what is there today?
In that zoning district, if you're going to do like an apartment building, for example, you have to use the flat style building, that's more based off a historic Sherman Hill apartment building versus the general building type, which most modern apartment buildings in a more most of those are a general building. They don't have the same level of detail requirements. So it is a higher standard from that perspective.
We do have a motion on the table to amend staff recommendation to add the 2.5-story max height. Unless there's additional discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion passes. That will do it for our items of the evening. Do we have any committee reports or director's reports?
No, just wanted to introduce Monica with our staff. She's here because Michelle is going to be on vacation, so she's going to be helping us at the next meeting. We want her to see what it was about before we throw you guys. Throw her
Welcome.
at it. So anyway, thank you.
Can I get a motion to adjourn? Thank you.